Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case. Today I am doing something which has never been done before on my channel and in general when it comes to the case, and that is a deep focus analysis and map analysis with Kaden Pressy and his supposed trip visit to a specific lake with JJ Bumpaz as a friend to get away from the darkness, as a distraction, post-news of Noah's death. But the biggest, most important factor of today is obviously discrepancies and dates of when it occurred on, because Kaden says it happened one day after the 4th of September, which would be on a Tuesday. JJ Bumpaz said Kaden wanted to hang out with me at the lake on the day, September 4th, 2023, of Noah's death. So who is telling the truth? Why does one say a later date and then the other one says an earlier date? These discrepancies, is it just a simple mistake and forgetting when it really happened, like Kaden has done before with timelines, or is there a darker reason behind it? Because let's not forget that phone call what Elisha made to JJ when she claimed to have called somebody else. Join me today, do not go anywhere, as we do a full-on analysis, a breakdown of it all, and even a map analysis, the scenario of what could have happened on the day of Noah's death onwards when Kaden was to leave, based on his timeline exclusively. Granted, when there's mentions of ODOT closing down the highway, that's at around 7:39 onwards, and Kaden was stating, well, he had left at 7 in the morning, much earlier when the highway was still closed. Who's telling the truth there? Well, if ODOT is at a later time and it was open before that, then when Kaden says about going down the back roads, it must have been all pushed back then later in the day. Maybe another discrepancy or mistake by Kaden. But regardless of times, focusing in on the day of Noah's death, activity levels of people, what they were doing, where, we're focusing on Kaden, because Warlight Wrath was the one true catalyst behind getting Kaden and JJ naturally in the same room at the same time, digitally speaking, in my old live premiere, where they were chatting back and forth despite being broken up previously because of either the case or because of other stuff going on in the background, just like how we've heard Kaden losing friends along the way, yet my video brought two people together, and what was said there was very interesting. Today, the order of how we'll do things is a quick recap on what was said between Kaden and JJ, which triggered this whole finding out about the lake trip, then going on to the map analysis and putting it into perspective. And I will also acknowledge the call made by Elisha too, the side-by-side comparison of what she claimed to have called, but who she actually did call. And it clearly shows that she was lying. Why is there a reason? Why is there a need to lie if you're truly innocent? Is it possible to have discrepancies and make mistakes and still turn out to be innocent? Yes. But does it get to a point where too many mistakes and too many inconsistencies can turn someone from being innocent into being a little suspicious? I would say so. So don't go anywhere today. It's all laid out perfectly and all under control. A Warlight Ref original, focused, locked in video today. We're going to break it down bit by bit so you get the full understanding. I've mapped out a possible route as well for the ride back home by Kaden, two-way dropped off people, roughly speaking, and so on. Whether you incorporate it as Kaden going home and then going back out, or Kaden skipping home to hang out with people, you can look at it however you want. Before we do go any further, I just want to highlight, welcome to those that are watching this live premiere. Let me know your live reactions in the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you are watching on catch up after, and at any point, if you do have comments, questions, whether you agree or disagree, anything in your mind, let me know those thoughts down below under the video in the comment section. It will help spread awareness of the video, and be sure to hit the thumbs up and share this video because it's never been done before, never been seen before, but it's absolutely needed at a time like this now with everything what we've heard previous. There is a time and there is a place, and what we've learned previous and with the call log by Elisha perfectly complements today's video. So it's done at the right time, all under control. If you are interested though in watching previous videos and the one last night which kind of triggered why we're here now, top right corner, catch up on all my videos on the case, I symbol up there with the full playlist. And if you want to support the channel, well, down below in the comment section, pinned message by me, there is a PayPal link. With that all being said, let's get straight into it. The first screenshot conversation, Big Black Detective asked the question up there. Okay, Kaden, so you did not go meet up with JJ Bumpaz that day? As in that day being September 4th, the day of Noah's death. Kaden's response saying, no, I did go with JJ to the lake the next day, Tuesday. That sounds all fine and okay, but when we scroll down a bit further, JJ Bumpaz at the bottom says, me and Kaden Pressy met up the morning Noah died. I texted him and asked why someone said something, and he said Noah's dead, man, and that was right after he had called me and woke me up. So we've got the discrepancy there where Kaden's saying me and JJ went to the lake Tuesday, and JJ saying it actually happened on the day of Noah's death, morning time. So before lunch from the looks of it. And considering JJ is making a reference to when that was right after he had called me and woke me up, woken up by a phone call, kind of sounds similar to Kaden Pressy quoting at 2:42 in the morning of Monday, awoken by Elisha calling. So by checking the phone, checking the time, and it's sticking in your head, 2:42, backed up by those phone call records of Elisha, the same could apply to JJ. JJ's referring to the time roughly and the day based on a call made which woke him up. Kaden's just saying, just in general with words, it was the next day. Kaden and JJ both together, but they're coming out with different days as to when they hung out. That sounds a little bit odd, doesn't it? Take in mind, JJ was never at the party, but Kaden was. So who's it more convenient for then? Such as if Kaden was to be there on the same day as Noah's death, but just a bit later, hanging out, getting away from it, whilst other party goers either remained, were interviewed, or just stuck around for a bit longer. You see where it's going? If Kaden was to hang out with JJ on a different day, when it's not as fresh or raw, the timing of it doesn't seem as suspicious. Just like the difference with if a crime was committed, people who may have been tied to it or seen as people of interest ended up fleeing to another country on the same exact day a few hours afterwards. That looks suspicious, like you're trying to get away from it and distance yourself mentally and physically. But if you was to fly away, go elsewhere, days later, weeks later or something, it might not sound or seem as dodgy or suspicious, right? All comes down to the timing element. We'll just acknowledge what else is mentioned here. JJ said the reason why Kaden did call JJ about hanging out to clear his mind with obviously what's gone on earlier. That's understandable. And detective says, JJ, that Monday or Tuesday? And JJ did say there at the very bottom that it was the morning Noah died, and we know that is September 4th, which is Monday. Kaden says to Tammy, yes, me and JJ were best friends since kids before all this happened. Okay. JJ's response to Sadie asking, JJ, were y'all gone for most of the day when hanging out? And JJ said, No, probably just an hour or two. Could it have been longer? Why was it somewhat short? Does it tie in with Elisha calling, wondering where maybe Kaden is or wanting him back home? You never know, based off the timing of it all, because the call made by Elisha on the day of Monday, the day of Noah's death, was at about 10:59 in the morning time, and JJ saying that him and Kaden hung out kind of in the morning time. Ties in line with it. Moving on. A little bit more. JJ says, I've known Kaden and Noah both since I was a child. Noah was my grandpa's neighbour. Kaden and I met at church when we were in preschool. And this is just the backstory to show how they were friends and how they still look out. What else do we have here? The Snapchat by Detective asking Kaden of Mikey at 5:27. Kaden never responded to that, which is very interesting, of course. JJ says, I'm not against anyone. I wish the best for Kaden. Kaden responds, likewise, buddy. So despite everything and anything that's happened with time, my video brought them together and they were in line with one another and being positive, which could be considered a bit of progress. And then this particular final few slides, JJ to Twilight, I was still friends with Kaden Pressy up until late May of 24, as in 2024. Late May. Is that around when the autopsy was released public? Interesting, the timing of when JJ and Kaden kind of parted ways up until late May of 2024. But why did it end there exactly? What else do we have? Kaden says, I'm unaware of the actual day we went to the lake, but I'm sure it was the next day. Right. This is the type of response by Kaden Pressy that if he said those same words in regards to his whole timeline, it might have made it just a little bit different. To say, well, I don't actually know what day it really was, but I'm sure it was the next day. Just like how you sure it's 5:15, that you're sure it was 6:30 when Renee showed up, that you're sure that she told you to leave, and you're sure that you left at 7 in the morning. Or maybe you're not really too sure about it, but you think you are. Language and wording of uncertainty. This is extremely important for anybody watching right now, where he says, I'm unaware of the actual day we went to the lake. And yet before that, earlier, Kaden said, it was the day after Noah's death when we hung out. And then a bit later in the chat, he says, well, actually, I'm unaware what day it was. So you don't really know. And it's not a bad thing to not know, but if you're putting yourself across in a slightly confident way and then you go against it after, you kind of contradicting yourself, and that could have knock-on effects to everything in the case with events and things that have been said. The equivalent, and it might have been mentioned in the same chat or near too, where Kaden was making a reference to overhearing Noah inquiring to other partygoers about having a lift home. And in the early days online, Kaden was wording it as if he knew, he saw, he witnessed it as to who Noah reached out to. And then in that chat, probably the same one, Kaden said, well, actually, I didn't see anything. I just overheard it. Right. It's kind of limited, isn't it? So there is a but to it. And I think that might apply to many other areas as well. Now, JJ Bumpaz says the reason as to why they parted ways, Kaden and JJ, is because of things pertaining to the case. Now, JJ isn't really a part of the case, but maybe there's a conflict of interest somewhere. Now, if it is because of the case and if it does tie in with JJ, does any of it officially with police link in to the day with that lake visit? Police wanting to know the whereabouts of people and why Kaden was at a lake and why he was there and not elsewhere, etc. Makes you think. And the last screenshot of this chat before we move on to the map, Kaden, yes, as well. Kaden says, I wish, but it ain't that easy. I miss my buddy, but it just ain't that easy. And George's original point to JJ and Kaden, you two should hug it out and make up. and it's just not that easy to do so. So it is interesting that the way it is, the situation. What does Sadie say here? Someone said that you had a timestamp of the rollover, Kaden Pressy. Where are they getting that information? Now, don't know if at the time of this was when the police interview was leaked or not. Can't remember the timing of it all, but at least from what I can remember, what Kaden had said in the leaked police interview, that he was shown footage or the after event of the rollover, which a friend showed him at a later time, a different day, and it had a supposed timestamp at 2:40 in the morning. How believable is that? Doesn't quite make sense with 2 minutes later Kaden waking up by Elisha calling about Georgia being on the way home, and Kaden then sees Noah in the same room besides Jack and Jasmine like nothing ever happened. So likely, because 2:42 is factual and backed up with hard evidence, the call logs, but the actual timestamp of the rollover probably would have happened, later rather than earlier, possibly when Kaden went back to sleep, depends. So it's the other thing is it's interesting looking back at the chats because there's many familiar faces here that are still watching my channel. So shout out to the examples of George, Sadie, Brenda, Andrea, of course, Twilight, and anyone else in between, Keith, and of course Sharon. Oh my God, Sharon, that profile picture, you look amazing. Wow. Anyway, besides that, I think we will acknowledge this in particular when we get onto the maps, but just to show you, you see that date there, the 9th of the 4th, 2023 at 10:59 in the morning, September 4th, 2023, Monday morning, could well be the call made, which was to JJ, in which JJ was referring to morning time. If I zoom in here, give me a second. Me and Kaden met up the morning Noah died, so could well be a link. Let's now apply it visually to the map. As you see on screen, it's quite a simple layout this time round, and in regard to the markers, I am basing it off the events of Kaden's timeline, but merging it in with the event of the lake visit on the same day as Noah's death, as from JJ's recollection. Because if we did it from Kaden's on the Tuesday, it doesn't look as suspicious. So what does that imply? That I'm only looking at it one way, the suspicious way, and not the non-suspicious way, because I just don't trust Kaden? Not quite like that. I am incorporating and including JJ for this particular video because one, I've not really done it before, and two, JJ is basing it off likely his memory of when he looked at his phone when Kaden made the call or did whatever to contact JJ about hanging out. So naturally, if you've got your phone with you and that's how you find out about it, you'll also be aware of the time likely and roughly the day, the time of day. And with that being on September 4th and Monday, even though Kaden does not add up with that, take in mind that Kaden has many discrepancies already, so there should be an understanding to be cautious of Kaden. So we need to start off with the beginning, the party house, right here. 6:30, Renee arrives, even though Renee herself said arrived close to 7 in the morning. But based off Kaden Pressy's timeline, who's supposedly correct, and people from the army page and beyond bowed down and listened and obeyed, we'll base it off of that. Kaden originally said, and it was mentioned in Partners in True Crime, the Partners in True Crime Part 1 interview, at 7 in the morning, Kaden was told by Renee to leave. Kaden taking Brylan Sweat, Mikey, Lair and Isaac Rojas back home. And that will be highlighted upon the highway in the yellow marker. I could do ground level, maybe we'll do it further on. I'm just going to drag it down and move as we head along just to show you the journey that was taken, roughly speaking by Kaden. Driving down about a mile or so down the highway. The first crossroad on the left, sand plank crossing, right on this turn point here. As you see, Kaden had said after 7 in the morning of leaving the party house, when getting down here, it was closed off by police further on. And the reason why this section was closed off, because roughly in this area here is where Noah's body was found along the side of the hard shoulder. Problem is, though, like how some has suggested, ODOT closed that part of the highway at 7:39, 7:40 in the morning. Meaning anything before that time, it wasn't closed, it was open. So if Kaden left the house at 7, there would be no reason to take the back roads. You could go straight on. So why did Kaden Pressy say it was closed and that there was a police presence earlier than when officially mentioned of ODOT being present and closing it? So what's really going on there? Is one person telling the truth, the other person lying, or getting confused again, like Kaden? Depends how you look at it. You can let me know your thoughts down below. I'm just basing it off Kaden's timeline. If he did supposedly say it was closed, taking the back roads, which would be this way, taking a right. And if you want to know what it looks like visually when facing the back road, that's what it looks like. There's a little sign there that says Highway 81. Driving all the way down there, Kaden Pressy did, along with Brylan, Mikey and Isaac, and eventually taking a left turn. Unfortunately, we can't actually go down there because there's no data. Eventually, turning left, and then popping out of a crossroad, which is further down that way, out of sight, and we'll get to that in just a second. But facing north that way, unable to move forwards because the road was closed. How far down was the road closed? Was it right at this point marker here? That's a sandplank crossing. Was it right here, like a barrier going across, or police tape? Or was it more noticeable further down? Who knows? As for 7 in the morning, what was the lighting like? I guess sufficient enough to be able to see clearly that it was closed. And even if it was dark by any means, there would have probably been barriers or some kind of lights and reflections and whatnot. Kaden Pressy did say that at this time, when noticing it was closed, Kaden did not check for numbers, badge numbers, or ask anyone about anything as for police at the time. So that's kind of interesting, because Kaden Pressy, when there at 5:15 earlier, there was no police or authorities whatsoever. So fast forward onwards, when there finally is authority and presence there, Kaden did not ask. Should he have done so? Well, it might have been interesting to see what could have been said by the police and if it would have reinforced Kaden or gone against him further, but nevertheless, taking the back road. And how that looks on the map, it's highlighted in yellow. Driving down here, taking a left there, and then taking another left here, and then connecting back onto the highway facing north. I'm guessing when facing south, round here, looking down that way, it would have been closed off, like another barrier in between. That's looking south, over that way, the party house, etc. This is the crossroad which Kaden drove down to come back on and connect with the highway. Then heading north onwards to drop people off home and for Kaden to get back home himself. But there is a but. Did Kaden actually make it home at the correct time, he says? Well, let's just continue on. In parallel to the, I think it's called the Red River, Texas border on the left, as you see. I don't want to go too fast for people. Passing through Ryan, as you see here. Is Ryan classified as a town, I guess? And it just goes on to, on the way to and past Waurika, which we're familiar with because that was the mention by Kaden and party goers when it came to Sunday morning breakfast, and Waurika being near with the Waurika Lake, with Jack mentioning about going there for that fishing trip. Hopefully visually it's all okay for you. So along this long highway and stretch, what is it, at least 30 plus miles of driving. It's going to take a bit of time. I believe Kaden said it may have taken about 40 to 45 minutes. And of course, it depends what speed you're driving at too. Similar to what I think Renee Milan said, similar to what Elisha Lee had said. On average, 40, 45 minutes, and they'll be living near to one another, likely for the same time and distance, etc. So what's important is, during that length of time, 40, 45 minutes of driving, not that long, but what really went on in the car as for conversations between Kaden, Brylan, Mikey, Isaac, was much actually said. From what Kaden Pressy made a reference to was Mikey appeared somewhat disturbed, going over and over again how he can't believe what's happened to Noah. I believe it might have been Brylan Sweat that was crying, or Isaac Rojas was, similar to at the highway. So it's interesting that. Of course, natural emotions and reactions, it's to be expected when there's a traumatic event going on. But was anything else expressed? I mean, if Noah at some point earlier when alive said to Brylan, "Do you have my back?" Did Brylan actually talk about that to anyone in the car during the journey back home? Would that have been mentioned? Would any mentions of any regrets or feelings have been highlighted? Oh, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. Oh, I wish I gave Noah a ride home. Because Kaden Pressy did say upon reflection later, it eats him up inside knowing that Noah reached out to Kaden and Kaden rejected Noah and said, "No, I can't drive you home." Obviously because of alcohol and being drunk, which is responsible and caring, and Noah approved of that at the time. But still, it impacted Kaden Pressy, I guess. Maybe a feeling of guilt. That feeling of guilt where you may blame yourself for someone else's death, that you feel like if you did more, reacted differently, you could have made a difference on that person's life. And it's easy to torture yourself when it comes to that. And from an outside perspective looking in, people would obviously say, you did the best you could. You couldn't think, you couldn't know anything and everything in the moment. You are human. You're doing your best. You're at a party as well, right? You're not to know what's going to happen next. Not exactly. Maybe last minute you might get a sense or a feeling something's wrong, but earlier on you might not see all the signs and you shouldn't be blaming yourself for it. But it is natural to at times blame yourself, even if you're not directly responsible. You may feel responsible, but there will always be other factors at hand. But of course, if anyone has any questions or suggestions, ideas, what do you think went on in the car during the journey back home with Kaden, Brylan, Mikey, Isaac? Was anything said? Or was it pretty quiet? I think Kaden said it was pretty quiet and awkward, the atmosphere, but was anything mentioned at any point? We've got Comanche here, and we're basically going further on, and I'll speed up now so it's not too long. I just wanted you to follow the car journey with me. It's towards Duncan. I believe Kaden Pressy lives in Duncan. A collection of people do actually. Right, come on. We're speeding up now. In and out. And the markers what I've put down are rough, just so you know. They're not accurate. But based off Kaden Pressy's interview with Partners in True Crime, Kaden said first he dropped Brylan Sweat and Isaac Rojas off at one of their houses, as in either Brylan's house or Isaac's house. They were dropped off together. Whether they lived together or just hanging out, that's where Kaden dropped them off. Not directly at this marker point. I just put it here because Kaden said it's near to Duncan or on the way. So I just put it as a rough marker. This is not as a fact. But the mention of who was dropped off first and in pairs, these were the two people, Brylan and Isaac. In regard to Mikey, that was supposedly further on. And depending on how it's worded, I think it might have been near some business, cash in and something. And Mikey was dropped off himself. Was that at Mikey's house? Taking in mind Mikey's age as well, being 16, 17 at the time with PTSD. PTSD, suffering from that on top of a traumatic event with Noah Presgrove. Because that's what needs to be acknowledged. Besides some that say there's only one victim in the case, there can be multiple victims in different ways on the day of the case and onwards, how people are traumatised by it. But if you've got people that may already be suffering from previous stuff, and then another event comes about, it stacks on top of it all. So it can make it harder for some. I know people have made references to Mikey being sent to some kind of, I don't know how people worded it now. Did some, quote, mental asylum or something, temporary? Who knows? But yeah, Mikey dropped off. And then further on, it's just a rough marker. It's not a guaranteed one. I just marked it over here. This is not the exact spot, but just a rough one. Kaden said at around 8 in the morning to 8:10 a.m, Kaden Pressy arrived home. Parents, surprisingly, were up and they were arguing over who's doing breakfast or so. Kaden told them the news of Noah's death at 8:10 in the morning. That's what Kaden said himself in his words at that time. So before that, parents were completely unaware. Kaden could have contacted his parents before leaving the party house, but he chose not to. Personal choice maybe, but what we do need to acknowledge, the post on Facebook by Elisha claiming at 6 in the morning, we, the parents, called the police upon hearing of the news because Kaden Pressy, when driving back home at 6 in the morning or a bit onwards, around, Kaden was crying whilst driving and told us the news. What? That's what Elisha had said previously. How weird is that? Because Kaden says, I only told my parents the news at 8:10 in the morning, and Elisha seems to know at 6 in the morning. Really weird. But besides that, if Kaden did get home at around 8:10, what did he do from there on then? Sit about, relax, try and distract himself, get some food, rest, and then at what time, because it's not directly been mentioned, Kaden contacting JJ Bumpers, seeing a friendly face, hearing a friendly voice, hey, can we hang out somewhere? Suggestion of a lake, and I think it's called Clear something lake. We'll get to that in a second. There's a suggestion of the location, and that's what we'll do. So they do like a meeting point, and they get out together. JJ woken up though, must be early-ish in the morning for it to be about, 2 hours of hanging out there. Maybe that might have triggered or sparked Elisha in calling to see how Kaden's doing. Whether Elisha was aware or not of what Kaden was going to get up to, because Elisha could have been like, hey, Kaden, no, stay where you are. What you've been through and what's happened, you need to stay with us close to loved ones. Don't be going off anywhere, just in case you need to buy police. But whatever, Kaden supposedly goes out. Now, Kaden says it wasn't on that day. It was actually on the Tuesday when hanging out. But Kaden also says, well, I don't actually know. I'm not that sure. So we can look at it from JJ's perspective. 8 in the morning onwards at some point, Kaden phones JJ, wants to hang out. And that's where we move on to that other rough marker here in yellow. Over that way, where we're going. In terms of the area, if you wanted to see what it looks like, just so you get a rough idea of this place, because it's always worth doing it, we'll just do it right now. Of Duncan, the neighbourhood, what it looks like visually. We're just in a random spot, just so you know. Looks pretty clean, looks decent, nice trees, colourful, and yeah. And there it is, onwards. And yeah, it kind of reminds me as well, because like when we heard about the Apple AirTag being tracked or stalked, and it was outside the place of living of theirs. Just brought it back up as a memory, that's all. Let's get back to the spot. No direct clear route which Kaden would have took, but I'm just basing it off a rough one to get to it. Driving down here to a turning point, which appears to be the highway. I said you might get private roads, alternative quicker ways. I'm just doing it my way from what I'm interpreting. Driving down here a long stretch to get to the area, the lake itself. I don't know where JJ lives himself, but that doesn't matter too much. Wild Horse Creek. Up and over. Taking a left turn here. And can we apply? We can, we'll do it from here. So he's come from wherever. Take in mind, if I did go down a private road, apologies about that, because it looks like that's a private road which we went down. But you get the idea. There will be a way to get down. I'm just showing you a quick express route. There we go. Clear Creek Lake. That might be the entrance, roughly, or a way of getting in. What does that say? Worship, connect, and serve. Oh no, what have we turned up at? Is it a church? A combination? Permit machine. Oh, church. And some crosses out there. What does it say on the board? City of Duncan. It must just be different signs telling you what's about. Don't know how far we can get down. Oh, what's that there? Oh, there's a missing dog. What type of dog is it? Missing dog. Old Roy boy. Oh no, sorry, I got the wrong one. Okay. Oh, there we go, we've got a sign. Let's just see what that says. City permit required for boating, fishing, camping and hunting. So, maybe they just hung out, sat by the water, talking and whatever to pass some time, opening up. Understandable. Interesting when you think about it that you've got Jack Newton that was supposed to be going to Warwicker Lake to hang out with his father and grandfather to go fishing. Even if it didn't really happen, it was supposedly planned and people are sceptical of that. If people are sceptical of Jack Newton and that fishing trip at Warwicker Lake and the meeting spot, well then let's have the same skepticism and questioning with Kaden Pressy and JJ Bumphouse, more so Kaden, who says it happened a different day when it supposedly happened on the day of Noah's death at a place where you can go boating, fishing and camping and hanging out. Does it let me go all the way? I hope it does. What I want to be able to do is try and get closer to the water, just so you can see it for yourself. Now, I would have shown you just the normal default photos, but the reason why I didn't is because some of them aren't exactly appropriate. Bloody hell, that's dodgy. Look at that abandoned building there. Well, it looks abandoned. It's weird how it just appears out of nowhere, things like that. Gates open, accessible. Interesting. What grass. Might be a car park up here, possibly. And then you got that other little building there. On lower ground. Where is that? What do we have over here? Vehicles parked up. A bin truck. The sign there. Permit machine. We've got trailers as well, RVs. There's the lake, I'm guessing. That's what I wanted. So hanging out somewhere around here. Parking up, no littering. Okay. So it's quite open. Some benches, picnic tables, as you would expect. So spending 2 hours here, supposedly. I'm just also trying to check to see if Joyce Bergow is caught on camera fishing or caught secretly doing some cornhole competitions. I don't know. There might be a few puddles about. Okay. So whilst I'm just simply looking about, and we're basing it on the day, if it's true that Kaden did want to hang out with JJ on the same day as Noah's death, is that suspicious or not? Is it suspicious wanting to get away from it all, wanting to hang out with someone that you know and like as a distraction, to pass a bit of time, to open up? It's pretty normal, I get that. What about the timing though? The delay? Well, you could get a delay of feelings, a delay of emotions, a rush of it. But Kaden Pressy, what he saw and what he felt at the highway, whilst Brylan or Isaac cried their eyes out at the time and Kaden hugged them and said it would be okay. Whilst Kaden might have been somewhat okay in the moment, doesn't mean to say you're going to be okay afterwards. It can kick in eventually. For Kaden to have the responsibility to be driving all that distance down the highway, whilst possibly upset, but still trying to stay focused and get on with stuff, eventually getting back home, possibly, others suggest that maybe Kaden skipped going home and went on to meet with JJ, and that's what led to that phone call being made by Elisha, because she may have not been able to contact Kaden because his phone was turned off. And when Elisha contacted JJ, said, "Is Kaden with you? Have you heard from Kaden?" And JJ's like, "Yeah, he's with me." Who knows? That might have been how it went. So the emotions and the reactions by Kaden can be considered innocent, right? But some people could be skeptical and say, why didn't Kaden stick around at the party like other people did until police came? Why not be interviewed in the moment, or at least show willing and present? The same could be applied to Brylan, Mikey and Isaac, that, yeah, they weren't driving, but they decided to tag along with Kaden back home, and they should have been present and remained at the house too. But they didn't. They went back and did whatever. You could also say, what did Brylan and Isaac do when dropped off at the same house? Did they hang out? Did they do anything whatsoever? And roughly, I wonder where, at least on the lake visit, where did Kaden and JJ actually hang out? Because I'm only just hovering around the area. We'll peer over there. Of course, the lake's pretty big. Might have just hung out near the water. Would they have gone out in a boat? Probably not. I think there was some suspicion by people suggesting, did Kaden Pressy go on the same day as Noah's death to this lake in order to dispose of something into the water? But if you were going to do that, surely there would have been witnesses present, with all these different trailers possibly being about on the day. Do we have anything over there? Some people waving. Is that Joyce Bergow? Don't think so. Becca hiding in the back. Yeah, Joyce Bergow saying about vacation. Who's tagging along? Becca. And what, Strawberry as well? Resting in that camper? I don't know. But no, in all seriousness, I personally don't think Kaden went here to dispose of items in the lake, personally. And if that did happen, JJ Bumpaz would have been a witness to it, wouldn't he? And from the looks of it, JJ, at this moment in time, doesn't have much, or there's no need to hide stuff. So, you get the idea of what it looks like visually, ground level, and the aerial view as well. It's pretty big, maybe the same size, yeah, kind of like in some ways the same size to Warwick Lake. Granted, there's an extension to that elsewhere, but the markers, as I said, and I've separated them. Take in mind that the dates are based off UK European time, as in the order it's in. It starts with the month, and then it starts with the day, and then the month, and then the year. As for the US, it's the other way around. So the 4th, the 9th, 2023. The 4th day of September is when JJ said Kaden wanted to hang out at the lake. Kaden says, no, it was the day after, Tuesday, the 5th of September, 2023. Big discrepancy between the 2 days. On one day, the death of Noah. On the other day, like the after effects. So, big difference. And the 4th, on that day, 10:59, Elisha calling. So, Elisha calling on that day Elisha specifically calling JJ, which just happens to be the day JJ says Kaden was with him at the lake, could imply that's why Elisha called, because she couldn't get through to Kaden and wanted to know where he was or what he was up to. So referring back to this once again, as said, with the actual full phone number shown, which is above board because JJ did it himself as well elsewhere, but as a disclaimer, don't be calling the number for petty or odd reasons. That will do no good. Make sure to control yourself there within an appropriate nature. That is a clear disclaimer. Elisha's call logs, and that phone number there, Elisha claimed it was that she was calling somebody else, as in Dorothy mentioned there. The person said, I apologise for messaging you, Elisha, but I was looking through the call list that you posted, that you will know all the phone numbers to, and I'm curious who is the person with the last 2 digits of 21. And the full digits were shown later, so Elisha would know. Elisha's response to, who I called at 10:59 in the morning, it was my husband's mother and Caden's nana. Mother-in-law, or sister-in-law, whatever you want to call them as. Dorothy, mum, nana, ends in 4121. 21, the last 2 digits, which are similar to the call log on here, as you see. But the final 4 digits are 5021. That's who Elisha called. And she's saying it was Dorothy, but Dorothy is 4121. Completely different. JJ, on the case discussion group, publicly revealed his phone number and said, my phone number, here it is, contact me if you need to, and final 4 digits are 5021. And as you can see, Elisha called that exact phone number on the day of Noah's death. Why would Elisha be calling JJ Bumpaz on the day of Noah's death when JJ was not at the party whatsoever? To simply pass on news as to what's happened? Why would there be a need to? When JJ said himself it was Kaden that contacted him about the news of Noah's death, or at least confirmed it. So what came first? Well, it seems clear that Elisha had outright lied in regard to who she called on the day at that time. And why would you need to lie exactly? So does that mean you've got 2 people lying, or one person lying and the other one unsure, and there's a dark influence over it? Elisha outright lies who she actually called on the day. It doesn't matter that much. It's only with JJ. It's probably not that deep and it's not that important. If it's not that important and it's innocent, once again, there is no reason to lie. And even if it wants to do with the case, is it about something else that's a bit dodgy? Who knows? Just to be honest, it makes it a lot more simple. The harder you make it, the worse you make it for yourself as for the long term, because it will just make people more interested and more suspicious and dig deeper and push harder. And that might not always be practical or necessary. It could be eliminated if it was, truthful from the start. So Elisha lying outright about who she called on the day, and Kaden Pressy either lying or being mistaken as in what day it happened on. Kaden said, no, I didn't go to the lake with JJ on the day of Noah's death. Actually, it was the day after. And JJ's like, no, it happened on the day of Noah's death. So once again, the duo double team of Kaden Pressy and Elisha isn't looking good. But could you put the point across and argue and say, Kaden Pressy is the one that makes the mistakes and the discrepancies with his times? He doesn't mean to cause harm or damage. He believes in what he says, but maybe it's not good enough. And he can be uncertain at times, like what we saw with some of his comments about, did he actually see Noah reaching out to people for a lift home? No, he didn't. Don't actually know about that. Can't remember the faces. I only heard about it with my ears, not my eyes. Oh. That's not how it was put across in the first place. And then the mention of the other details as well about, well, actually, I don't really know what day it happened on, but I'm sure it was Tuesday. It's just not good enough. So is Kaden Pressy the one that makes the discrepancies, the mistakes accidentally, and then Elisha is the one that feeds Kaden Pressy influences in a negative way to adjust the story, or just that Elisha twists and lies along the way? really, at the end of the day, Kaden Pressy does seem mostly innocent. Not done himself any favours with the discrepancies and inconsistencies along the way, of course, but, you know, just basing it off, if Kaden is asleep from 2 in the morning, past the point of Noah's death, and then whatever happens, 5:15 or 6 in the morning, doesn't really matter, Kaden should be innocent. As long as Kaden is asleep during the time of when Noah leaves, and then likely the time of his death, whilst Kaden is asleep and in one place, Kaden can't do anything. Kaden can't be responsible for the death of Noah. Kaden wouldn't know anything because he's asleep. It makes him truly innocent. So really, there is no reason to lie. So if Kaden isn't lying, then likely he might just be more so getting confused or mistaken, but he genuinely believes in what he says, which is a normal human thing. Is there any ways to make one who is set in their ways see it from a different perspective, to show that they could be wrong so they can accept it themselves? Where you probably need some hard evidence and proof along the way from a different perspective, and to some extent a small one would be the Mikey Lair snap, but when people have tried showing that to Kaden and asking and inquiring, are you aware of this snap, are you aware of the actual time, Kaden has refused to answer. So it does make me think, if down the line, if there's any hard counter evidence to say, Kaden, you got it wrong, it's a later time of when things happened, if anyone showed it or asked Kaden would probably blank or ignore it, and because maybe that's a reaction of, oh yeah, you're right, but I don't want to admit it, or I can't admit it because it'll make me look worse now. It gets past a point, doesn't it, where it gets kind of awkward. But could Elisha have guided Kaden any differently along the way? Considering that in the early days, supposedly Kaden had a good memory, told Elisha everything, and then Elisha remembered it from there on then when Kaden couldn't, and then Elisha feeds back info to Kaden to remind him of stuff, and some of that was prompted in the Parts in True Crime interview. But when someone is tasked with remembering it all from the original person and then relaying the information, passing it back on to the original person, you've got the power and responsibility in feeding it back to the person correctly and properly. You start making little adjustments yourself and tuning it a little bit differently to what Kaden once knew. Kaden might just say, oh yeah, I remember that, oh yeah, without thinking too much. But then it's making Kaden look bad because of a side influence that has changed and twisted it along the way. Once again, there'd be no reason to do any of that by Elisha because Kaden appears to be innocent. So there's no reason to adjust, manipulate anything whatsoever. If Kaden was asleep, Kaden was asleep. That should be good enough. If you truly don't know the times or you're a little bit confused, the quickest and easiest thing to do in the moment is to say, I don't really know, I'm not too sure, I'm not too certain, and just keep saying that. It would have probably avoided a lot of headaches. If you jump on in and confident and you stick by certain stuff, and then eventually down the line cracks form, you built a trust, you built a rapport with people, and now it's all crumbling and people are going to be screwed and think, oh no, what are we supposed to believe now? Put all that trust, all that time, all that effort and hope in for it to all be for nothing. That's more detrimental and damaging to people's trust and trust issues. Whereas if you're honest from the start, like if you don't know, you don't know. That's how it is in life. If you really don't know, if your mind's blank, it is what it is, but at least it's straight to the point and being honest. So certain wording and language could have been used in the early days and it probably would have made some a bit better off and less attacked, I think. At the end of the day, today's video was to focus on Kaden and JJ, the event that happened supposedly at the supposed location, timing of it, Elisha's call as well, inquiring to JJ maybe about Kaden, where's he at, what's he doing, can he come home yet, whether people say that's controlling behaviour or not, skipping the Pressy household or Kaden first going to the Pressy household, then leaving to get back out to meet up with JJ, depending what order that happened in. But it seems like there's a fair chance that the lake visit did happen on the day of Noah's death, and with it being on the same day, Kaden distancing himself, more so maybe as a distraction, which is an innocent thing to do and delayed reaction, but it kicks in emotionally for people differently at different times. I get that. Would some people, viewers online, be thinking, it's a little bit odd, a bit unusual, you know, getting on with other stuff, doing other stuff when what's happened has happened? Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? Why are you not over there? Why did you not remain at the house? Why do you not stick around for police to get that out the way? I said everybody reacts differently in the moment and after, but it just needed to be documented. All I would say is, if it was a simple trip to a lake, a simple act of hanging out to pass time as a distraction, the fact that one says it happened on the day, the other one says it happened the day after, why is there such discrepancies there over a simple event? And why is Elisha lying about who she actually called on the day of the possible event? These lies and discrepancies make it out to be something maybe more suspicious than what it actually is, but you can't help it. It's just the way people have made it themselves, kind of on them. So be sure to add your additional thoughts, comments down below, and if you've got any questions, we'll leave it there for now, and if there needs to be a follow-up update, I'll do a future video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the share button and the thumbs up. I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.